Destroy the child. Corrupt them all.
Let's get some reaction on that story, joined by Ryan Dawson, author and peace activist out of Osaka. Mr. Dawson, I think what we can get from this latest development is that when the United States says it's withdrawing its forces from the region, in particular Iraq and Syria, it never actually withdraws its forces from the region, in particular Iraq and Syria.
Well, they withdrew from northern Syria. That's all he promised to do. And a lot of people thought that meant everything north of the Euphrates River. We predicted otherwise on ANC report. They're going to stay at Abu Kamal, and they're going to stay in Al Tanf, and has really almost nothing to do with the oil fields. That's just a pretext to explain why they're maintaining a presence there. Keeping the oil away from Syria does hurt the Syrian government somewhat, but the real reason the U.S. is there, the real reason they've been there since the beginning of the war, is to protect the highways that connect Syria to Iraq to prevent a flow of weapons from reaching Hezbollah. They even admitted that Israel and Jordan asked them to stay. You can scratch Jordan from that equation because all that matters is Israel told them to stay. The U.S. military is also in Al Tanf. There's no oil down there whatsoever and no threat of Daesh. The entire area is surrounded by territory controlled by the Syrian army, and yet they sit on the highway anyway because that's the real reason the U.S. is in Syria.
So, Ms. Ryan, do you believe that the U.S. presence there is because of does it have any links in regards to the recent opening of the border crossing of Al-Qaim and Abu Kamal between Iraq and Syria?
Well, absolutely. And you can see that the Israeli airstrikes are always concentrated on Abu Kamal. That's the weak spot that they can reach. And that's what they're really concerned about is Shia militias from Iran entering the area, and weapons, they'll say, is to stop weapons from going to Hezbollah. And that is a reason. But they were also using the Kurdish territory as a launching pad to do strikes in Iraq and other parts of Syria themselves. That's why they've been allowed to annex that territory. But the threat is if Syria is able to connect to its neighbors, then it can get more trade and goods, and it will help them in their war effort to defeat ISIS. But aren't we supposed to be fighting Daesh and ISIS? Publicly we are, but privately the U.S., Israel, and Saudi Arabia have been arming them and financing them and giving them logistical support throughout the entire war.
So finally, Ryan, in regards to the borders of Iraq and Syria, isn't that for the Baghdad and Damascus to have control of its own borders? Is that not a violation of the two countries' territorial integrity?
It ought to be, and the U.S. was never invited to Syria, unlike the Russians. The Russian Air Force was asked by Bashar al-Assad to intervene, and that's how they pushed ISIS out of the area. However, the Pentagon just replaced ISIS with the Kurdish groups. The Kurds don't refer to it as northern Syria. They refer to it as Kurdistan and Rojava. They think that territory is theirs. It's sad that they're being pushed out by the Turks, but they, of course, push Assyrians and Christians and other religious minorities out themselves. And so the whole country is supposed to belong to Syria. It's Syrian sovereignty, and it should be up to Iraq and Syria to decide what they want to trade and what they want to move on those highways or oil pipelines or anything else.
Okay, Ryan Dawson, author and peace activist, thank you very much for your contribution.
Make fun of me all you want. This is their plan, people. They're frickin' interdimensional invaders.